Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel CCM Drummer and another edition of the history of contemporary Christian music. This will be part 5. In parts 1 and 2 I gave a general overview of of contemporary Christian music and its origins and roots and how it evolved, and then of course in part 3 I talked with you about my encounter with Keith Green. Part 4, I talked about Phil Keaggy. Okay, today is part 5, and I want to talk about my encounters with second chapter of Acts. Now, at the time I was exposed to second chapter of Acts, I was attending the Agape Force Training Institute in Lindale, Texas, which is really kind of in Garden Valley, Texas. Lindale was more of a mailing address more so than actual physical location. We're actually in Garden Valley on Highway 110, just north of Interstate 20, okay? And in that area, in that general area, Lindale area as a general rule, there was an enclave of a lot of Christian artists that I got to know. And of course, I talked to you about Keith Green, who actually had a headquarters there. Phil Keaggy came to visit the Agape Force campus and did a concert there, but didn't live there. But another group that I was exposed to is second chapter of Acts. Now, during the school, while I was studying my time in that ministry, I had heard about them. I heard I heard 2 of their albums with footnotes, which was, I think, was their first one, and then another one called To the Bride. Various students had cassettes, and back then we listened to records on cassette decks, cassette tape players, okay? So I had already got a good idea about second chapter of Acts. And then in 1978, second chapter of Acts came out with Mansion Builder. That was a really good album. And at any rate, they came to the Agape Force campus either in late 1978 or early 1979. I don't remember. I know I was assigned to a music team at that time, and I think we just got off touring ourselves, and we were there at the base and, waiting for our next assignment to go out on another tour. So we're like in between tours when they came in, but I just don't remember exactly when. It was either early December before the Christmas holidays, or it was just after the New Year's holidays, whatever. But anyway, that general time frame. But anyway, now when Phil Keaggy and Keith Green did a concert there at the Agape Force campus, of course they did their concerts in the cafeteria. But this was about a year after that, and of course the gymnasium was finished at that time. And so in the gymnasium, you could pull up the basketball goals, put a tarp out over the basketball court, and we actually had platforms we could set up as stages, and and a band could come and do a concert. Well, the second chapter of Acts was the first band to do a concert in that gymnasium, and it was so cool. And in fact, I was one of the guys helping out, setting up the stage and putting out the chairs and yada, yada, yada. And we saw second chapter of Acts come in and set up. And I was there the whole time watching him set up, watching him do warm-up rehearsals and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool. Some things I want to note on that experience, Matthew Ward could play drums. He can play drums. He was playing the drums during the warm-up. Okay, so after they had warmed up, and Gene Grunnels, who was the drummer at that time, left his drum set, and Matthew Ward would get behind the drum set, and he'd play the drums with his sister Annie, who was playing the piano. And his drumming was pretty good. I was very impressed. And in fact, I am a drummer, and I was playing drums in a band at that time, and was fairly impressed with his work. So I don't know how many of you know that Matthew Ward can play drums. During a break time, behind the gymnasium. You know, you can go up the stairs, and we had a break room, a rec room, and, you know, restrooms and candy machine, a lounge, all that, okay? Anyway, I went up there, and I saw Annie Herring at the table tennis table, or most people call ping pong tables. She was just standing by herself at the ping pong table with the ball in her hand, the paddle in her hand. So I walked up to the end of under the table and says, well, can I play with you? And she says, well, I'm waiting on Matthew. He's in the restroom. He'll be here shortly. And I said, okay, well, while you're waiting on Matthew, can I, you know, warm you up and keep his spot warm and, you know, get you ready? He says, oh, okay, yeah, okay. So she serves the ball, and I, you know, nonchalantly hit it back, and the next thing you know, Annie zings one down on my backhand side, and I'm going, oh, wow, this, you know, this lady is no pushover. I was thinking, well, you know, Annie's a singer and a piano player, musician. How good could she be at playing table tennis? And so she zinged one by me, so I said, okay. So I put a little more force on my service, and she zinged one back to my forehand side and got one past me. Then the next one came down the middle. She just slammed it down. She was getting the best of me in ping pong, and to the point where I was looking out the corner of my eye going, okay, where's Matthew? Please hurry up and get here. But we had about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 exchanges playing table tennis, and she won the majority of them. Had we actually played a full game, she probably would have won. So yeah, Matthew arrived in time. I gladly gave him the paddle. Here you go. I'm out of here. So yeah, that was one of my encounters with Annie Herring, playing table tennis just for a very short time. That concert was a very good concert. I remember it being, they played most of the songs they played at that concert were from the Mansion Builder album. And I remember them playing the song Starlight, Starbright. Of all the songs on that album, that's probably your most rock and roll, rockin' song, the high energy, upbeat songs of all the songs they played. Now, second chapter of Acts back then got some of the same pushback that Phil Keaggy got when Phil Keaggy, because a lot of people didn't like the Phil Keaggy concert because it was too upbeat, too rock and roll, too high energy. You know, back then Christian music was supposed to be a certain type of music, and you know, he didn't fit that mold. Well, second chapter of Acts kind of sort of followed in that same path. They were a little beyond, you know, what it should be at the time, and they were perceived as being rock. And they really weren't. They had a few songs that were rockish, but they had some ballads, and they had medium range stuff that, you know, most mainstream people would have appreciated. But yeah, they got some of the same pushback. Now, in 1980 or 81, I don't remember which, second chapter of Acts actually moved to Garden Valley and lived with us in that general area. They moved next door. They bought some property next door to Last Days Ministries, which was Keith Green's ministry. And they built themselves a building to live in, and they had a racquetball court and some studios and whatever, big metal building, and they lived in it and stuff. It was kind of cool. Yeah. And okay. And you know, I would see Matthew Ward. He'd ride his 10-speed bike down Highway 110, come on the Agape First Campus, go to the Crystal Springs bookstore, buy him a drink, and he'd sit out on the grass and rest. And you know, I was walking to my dorm or wherever I was walking to, I'd see him, I'd wave, hey, how you doing? You know, never talked to him. I could have. I mean, it wouldn't have been difficult. He was accessible like Keith Green was when he came. And I remember Steve and Nellie. Steve is Nellie's husband. They had a preschool age child at that time. I saw him at the mall in Tyler, Texas. So yeah, they were very down-to-earth, available people. Oh, 1982 concert. I saw a 1982 concert they did in Dallas, Texas. Now that concert really had an indelible impression on me. Not so much, well, I mean spiritually, of course. They had very high ministry value, but one thing about the 1982 Dallas concert that really had a lasting impression on me, they had a new drummer. His name was Jack Kelly. Gene Grunnels had left a band called David, and Jack Kelly took his place. Now, at that time, Jack Kelly was playing open-handed. Now, what open-handed means when you're playing the drum is, if the hi-hat is on your left side of your drum set, you're playing the hi-hat with your left hand, and you hit your snare with your right hand, okay? Most drummers, when they play the hi-hat, they do a crossover, okay? They hit the hi-hat like this. Their right hand is crossing over the snare drum and playing their hi-hat with the right hand, which is on the left side. That's how most of the drummers play, but Jack Kelly was the very first open-handed drummer I ever saw in my entire life. I didn't even know it was called open-handed. I just called it riding your hi-hat with your left hand, because the hi-hat was on the left side of the kit, which made perfect ergonomical sense to me. Now, when I saw him play, I was not playing drums at that time. I was reassigned to a drama team and was out of music, but I told myself, wow, that is so cool. If I ever get back into playing drums, I'm going to try that. And of course, when he was riding his ride cymbal, which was on his right side, he would use his right hand. Okay, so he was ambidextrous, but never crossed over, which is cool. Now, I have since emailed Jack Kelly and talked to him, and he says that he's not exclusively an open-handed player. He plays both ways, crossover and open-handed. Now, myself, once I learned open-handed playing, I never went back to cross. Never. I mean, it's so much better, but everybody's different. But yeah, he was my first influence to play open-handed. Then 2 years later, I saw Joe English play open-handed at a Joe English concert. So he actually reinforced what I saw from Jack Kelly. So really it's Jack and Joe that influenced me to play open-handed. But anyway, that all started at a second chapter of Acts concert. Lastly, I know when I was in the Agape Force especially, music teams were evaluated on how well they minister. It was very important that a music team not just play their music, but they also minister, whatever that's supposed to mean. That could mean different things. It could mean giving your testimony, sharing the Lord, encouraging your audience to give their hearts to Christ, or whatever. It could be a whole number of things. But I would say second chapter of Acts' ministry approach had a very high ministry value. Buck Herring would always start out the concerts with just him in the audience, and he would have the audience sing songs, and he'd give a word of exhortation and encouragement during that time before he would introduce the band. So he established the spiritual tone of the concert himself, just getting up there talking to the audience, and you felt as if, okay, we're in church now. And then he would introduce the band, and then of course Annie Herring shared a lot. Matthew Ward shared at the 82 concert in Dallas. He didn't share anything, I don't think, at the 78 or 79 concert there at the Agape Force campus. And I don't remember Nellie sharing anything. Not that Nellie never did, I wasn't at those concerts if she did. And but I think one of the reasons the second chapter of Acts had a very high ministry value in their presentation was, obviously Buck Herring getting things started off, but Annie was an open book. I mean, she was very transparent in her life. And if there was any spiritual struggles that she was going through herself personally, she was not bashful about sharing with the audience what she's going through. And that kind of, created a good impression, because we thought, okay, well, Annie Herring's just like the rest of us, and Annie Herring's poetry was very incredible. The poetry in her, she wrote most of the songs that second chapter of Acts sang, and of course the poetry, she had one song, in the song, He's My Source. Some people are driven by the wind. Some people are driven by their madness. But I'm driven by the man who's had nails driven in his hands. Oh, who writes stuff like that? That is powerful, and yeah, it's incredible. But that's what made them so good, is the fact their music was top notch, it was professional, and they had good poetry. I saw their last concert in Houston, Texas in 1988. And so I've actually been to 3 of their concerts. But that's all I have to say about second chapter of Acts. Thank you for watching. And if you haven't seen the previous videos on parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the history of Christian music, I encourage you to go see it. Thank you for watching, and please feel free to subscribe to my channel. Click the notification bell when you subscribe, so you'll be notified of my uploads, and look at my drum covers. Take care. God bless.